Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Health Economics Chapter 3. I'm your instructor Norman again, so I'm glad that you are surviving for your previous chapter assignments. So we are moving on to new topics this week. So in Chapter 3 we are going to talk about the demand for healthcare in a little bit more theoretical sense. So we will use one very famous economic models to explain the demand for healthcare. There are several things that we would like to cover in this chapter. So chapter 3, basically it's all about Grossman models. So the Grossman model is the most common models in the health economics topics to explain the choice of individual households to choose the level of health they want according to several different concepts that we are going to pick up in this chapter. So basically we are going to see how people making choices in everyday life, either they choose the level of health they desire, or maybe is it something that's set in our agendas in life. Remember, in the previous chapter, the demands of healthcare is downward sloping. So the only thing that we find out in chapter 2 basically is people choose the amounts of healthcare they want to receive based on the price of those services. But what's more important for us to answer is, does people actually choose their own healthcare service or the level of healthcare services they want to use? But do they choose their own health? Right? So we know that the price they will care when they get access to these services, but do they actually choose the level of health? Because, well, more services that they actually use does not mean that they will get better life, right? So for some people out there, you go to the hospital more often, or you're eating more supplements, or maybe taking more drugs when you're sick, does not mean that you have a better life. So is health something that happened to us, or do we actually choose it? So all this topic we are going to discover in this chapter by using the Grossman models. One important concept to pick up from our principal econ classes is trade-off. Just like any other decisions that you make in your life, when you're trying to spend your time to study, you're basically giving up the time to hang out with your friends. When you're trying to buy a computer, well, those money spent on a computer, well, you cannot spend it on other things like buying a PlayStation 4, or maybe spending the money to going to have this gym memberships. So every decisions in our life actually involve trade-offs, including health decisions. So everything that we use or everything that we spend resources on actually come with a cost, and this cost is what we call the opportunity cost. So every time decision is made, opportunity costs engage. Health, it's the same. For example, actually when we are trying to think about to do something to improve our health in the daily life, such as taking joggings in the morning, well, you might actually want to prefer to stay home and play this video game. So basically when you're playing the video game at home, you are giving up the opportunity to go out there and enjoy the sunshine and take a little jogs out there to make yourself a little bit healthier. Also, there are some people out there might actually always craving for this chocolate chips cookie, or maybe snacks, right? All this very high caloric foods, high energy foods, which result in gaining weight, right? So when you are eating more of this junk food or maybe snacks, well, the opportunity cost is to keep an ideal weight for yourself, which make your health maybe a little bit bad or worse comparing to if you are choosing a healthier food choice. So after all, managing health over lifespans of time is an economic problem we have to solve. Well, to be honest, it has no difference comparing to whether you want to invest your money, right, to actually have your future income growth in your stock profiles or maybe your financial agendas. So health, you have to accumulate. Right? So it's not just one-time decisions. It's not like you're making decisions to go run out there today and then you will be healthy for your lifetime. It's actually a sequential decision you have to make every day of your life. So in 1972, Michael Grossman, one of the great health economists in the United States, actually came up with this model that's called the Grossman Model. Of course, this is a very powerful model because it provides several different provisions of this health decisions made by individuals, households, how they actually choose the level of health and what's the decisions for people to choose whether they want to put more times into this health, better health outcomes, or maybe putting more of the resources to grow this health outcome in the future. It helped explain a lot of things, especially later in chapter 4, we are going to discover how this model can explain the social economic status might actually provide a different health outcome for people. So in this Grossman models, actually there are 3 rules of health. So number 1, health is a direct consumption goods to our utility. So that means it's something that we can purchase like all the other goods. So health, it's one of them. We can actually spend resources in our life to actually get these products that we call health and to make ourselves happy. And number 2, health is also an input in production. So health, basically, it's one of the inputs in our life. A better health we have, basically it provides a little more of other things that we can get in our lives. So the simplest example is, well, better health we have, well, we might actually spend more times hanging out with our friends, or maybe spending more times at work so that we can earn higher level of income to buy other stuffs. So health, it's basically one of the inputs in our life. And also later we are going to discuss, well, consider health is something that we accumulate over time. Well, it can also feel as a stocks, right? It's like an investment to our future happiness, future utility. So all these 3 rules are what we actually getting from the Grossman models related to health. So each of them, we are going to break it down into this chapter to discover, well, what's the rule of health do to our decisions makings in everyday lives. So let's talk about health as a consumption good. So just like how we began the chapter, this chapter is going to be very theoretical. It's because the fact is we have to have some frameworks to lay out in order for us to discuss about the outcomes of this model. Well, we are going to use some equations and graphs to illustrate those concepts and theories, but don't worry, I'm going to try to keep it very simple for you guys. So number 1, how are we going to conceptualize health as a consumption good? So basically we assume there are some utility at time t. So the ut in the equations here basically illustrates how happy we are in that one time period. So you can actually think about, well, it's the utility, the happiness that we have in the year of 2017, right? So the utility actually coming from 2 different sources, and those are what we call the consumption goods. So either you have a high level of health, HT, so the health conditions in the year of 2017, or maybe we have more of the home goods in the year of 2017, so which is ZT. So ZT basically represents all the non-health related goods that contribute to our happiness, such as maybe playing a video game that's not going to cause our health, spending time with friends, talking with friends that's going to make us happy but not going to affect our health, buying a movie tickets to watch the movie. Again, those are the activities that will actually give us some happiness or utility in life, but it's not going to affect any of our health. Please note, we are talking about health here. It's not health care that we are using. So we are getting utility actually directly from the level of health, how healthy we are, the conditions of health, but not the health services from healthcare, because healthcare does not directly get into our happiness. Taking a vaccine, for example, it's not going to make us happy. But staying healthy because we took the vaccines, then, well, it's going to make us happy. So, in this one-time period models, we assume at time t, we have so much of a time that we can contribute to these two consumption goods. Right? So either the level of health, HT, or maybe the goods that we can buy, or maybe activity we can do that's not related to health for ZT. So in this single period models, we only have assume 24 hours in a day to contribute to our utility. So for example, we can actually say there are 24 hours that we can use in a day, and those 24 hours can be divided up into 4 different time periods. So for example, we always need to work in order to get the incomes to buy all these movie tickets, baseball equipment, basketball, video game consoles. So we have to work at some point of time. So we are going to distribute 24 hours into partial of the 24 hours into working time, which is TW in this equation here. And except for the time that we work, well, of course, we have to actually spare some time, which is the leisure time, to hang out with friends, to actually make use of those game consoles. If we bought it and we never play it, of course, it's not going to give us any kinds of happiness. Also, we have to divide up the time into watching the movie. So all this time we call the playing time, which is denoted as TZ here. There are some times that we use to actually improve our health. And those are the times that we spend like on jogging, spending times to go to the gyms, spending time to find out the health related information, studying for the health educations, maybe time that we spend to improve our knowledge, how to make ourselves a little bit healthier with the lifestyles. So all this time that we spend to improve health, it's represented by TH here. And of course, except for those time that we work, the time that we actually get leisure to hang out with friends to gain with utility without any health-related issues, and also time that we spend on getting better health, there are times that we get sick. So that's what we denoted as TS here. So time being sick, it's denoted as TS. So the 24 hours basically can be divided up into this 4 main category here. So let's suppose the time that we work, TW, can produce income. So by things that contribute to the utility, well, we have either H, the level of health, and Z, which is the consumption goods that we buy not related to health. Those are goods that we need to spend time in the activity on TH, which is time spent on health activities, and time spent on buying the home goods, Z, TZ. So time being sick, it's not going to contribute anything to our utility. Indeed, when you get sick, you might actually not feel happy, so the utility actually decrease. So every hour spent sick, taking away time to do other things that increase utility, such as spending time to hang out with friends, spending time to work to get incomes, or maybe even spending time to go out there to jog to become a healthier person. So time sick, TS, it's something that taking off or taking away the time that we can do other possible activities. So let's talk about the purpose of this time. So working time, basically it's used to generate income so that we can buy home goods, Z. And playing times basically is the time we use on the goods that we buy with our income and to make it into a form of Z in the utility functions. So we can actually spend those time playing puzzles with our friends. We can actually browse around on Facebook to actually check what's happened to our friends' lives, or maybe spending time to go to the opera. So all this time are basically generating Z in general. And improving health, it's the time we use on TH. So those are the things that we do to enhance H in the utility functions. And TS, again, it's basically waste of time in our life. We don't want to spend time on and in bed and doing nothing. So we want to actually lower the level of sick time in our life as much as possible in this case, if utility, happiness is all we care in our life. Suppose, given a fixed level of sick time, TS, and healthy time, TH, an individual actually choosing how to allocate his time between work, TW, and leisure, TZ. So this is basically what we call the labor-leisure trade-offs. So in the diagram here, it was illustrated by the downward sloping straight line, where the individual actually is trying to pick a point on the straight lines at a different level of work time and different level of leisure time. Of course, the individual wants to work more, he will has less time to enjoy life or maybe to relax. With more time not at work, then well, he will have more time spending for leisures. So the optimal points for this individual to decide, it's based upon the indifference curve. I believe some of you guys may have heard about the indifference curve or learned about it from your principal Michael class. If not, that's fine. We have this separate video that actually illustrates how the indifference curve work and what do we mean by budget constraint. But the idea here is the individual actually always pick the optimal point where the indifference curve, which is either U0 and U1 in the diagram, that is tangent to the time constraints. So this ultimate goal is basically trying to find this one point that can bring the maximum utility for the individuals, picking certain level of working time and certain amounts of leisure times. Well, in this analysis, it's not only just picking the optimal points on the diagram, but it actually helps us to see more clearly the values of health improvements. So when health actually improves in our life, that means we will spend less time sick, and it also represents more time that we can spend on productive activities, such as working to earn income, maybe spending time leisures to hang out with friends, or maybe even we can actually spend time doing some healthy activities like running out there, playing basketballs, or maybe doing gyms. So with health improvements, obviously it will push our time constraint outwards. So that means given a better health, we spend less time sick and we will have more time spent on both at work and also leisures. So a better health means we can actually push that time constraint outwards, and in order to achieve a higher level of both working time and leisure time. So basically we are just illustrating in the diagram, we might actually be able to achieve improvement from moving point D to point D prime in the diagram. So knowing how health can be consumption good in our utility function, it helps us to understand how health can increase the level of utility in our life. But also at the same time, we believe the second rule in the Grossman model also explained to us how health to become part of the inputs in our production functions for health and also home goods. So in the previous section, we actually see how health can contribute directly to the utility functions. So in this section, we are going to talk about how health can actually increase the productive time in our life. So the productive time we are defining here, basically the time that we spend at work to earn income, the time that we spend on healthy activities, and the time that we spend on leisure. Well, just like in the previous section, we are going to use some equations or maybe some formula to represent the relationship between different variables that contribute to health in general and also home goods. So let's take a look at these health functions, HT. So we say there are several things that contribute to our health at time period T. Things like HT minus 1, we will talk about in just a second, and TH, which is the health time that we contribute on health activities, such as spending times on jogging, spending times on playing the basketball with our friends, spending time on the treadmills. And MT here, it's basically what we define as the market input for health. So those things that we have to buy with our income, such as you can actually buy a weight and bring it home to exercise. So that will make you healthier. And also treadmills that you can buy and run at home to make yourself a little bit fitter. So things that we in general buy with our income that for the purpose to improve our health, basically what we describe as MT here. And obviously, buying just those market input does not make us healthier, because we have to actually spend time, which is TH here, on this market input in order to improve our health. Well, there is another source of goods that we contribute to our utility, which is ZT. So the home goods ZT here, it's basically the home goods we get at time period T. Well, what actually increase or decrease the level of ZT? Basically, number one, the time we spend on leisure, right? So TZ here. And also we call this JT, the market input for home goods Z. So JT here basically represents all the things that we buy from our income that make us happy but not related to our health, such as the video game we buy, the opera tickets that we buy, the Coca-Cola we buy from the supermarket, or maybe simply just a rollerblade that you buy. Sometimes it could contribute to the health, but in most cases you're buying those things just because you want to get a higher level of utility or make yourself happier. But of course, again, well, buying a video game, buying the opera tickets, the movie tickets, you have to spend income, but it won't give you utility or maybe increase the level of home goods directly, because you have to use time on it, right? So when you buy this movie ticket, you're not going to go watch it. Of course, ZT is not going to increase. So you have to combining this market input, JT, with TZ in order to increase the level of home goods that contribute to your utility. And also, one important thing that we have in this equation here is the HT minus 1. So we believe the health that you get today actually directly carry over from your previous health. So it's almost like a stock of health that you are accumulating over time. So for example, if you were healthy last year, in the year of 2016, well, I would assume that you will still be healthy in the year of 2017, because the healthy factor actually carry on over time. However, if you are sick in the year of 2016, let's say you broke your ankle in, let's say, somewhere in the summer, well, it takes time for you to recover. So once you hurt one time, well, your health will be affected, and it will affect not only the current periods, you will feel pain, but it will take time for you to recover, and the health will slowly improve, of course, but still, I would say you will be less healthier comparing to before the injury happens. So your previous health conditions, HT minus 1, actually affects the current periods of health conditions for individuals, which is HT here. We will talk about the third rule of health as a stock in the next section, but here we're mainly focusing on how we can actually make this productive time to increase the level of health and also increase the level of home goods by having a better health. So let's say, look at the time functions here. Again, we're defining the productive time, TP here, as the total times, the 24 hours we have every day, minus the sick time. So that means the productive time here, basically the time we spend at work, TW, the time we spend at leisure, TZ, and the time we spend with health activities, TH. So healthier you are, of course, the less sick time you will have. That's pretty much the same simple sense we are assuming here. So TP is a productive time spent on all the useful activity, and we basically defining useful activities such as activity that increase the level of utility in life. So increasing the productive time can also be reinvested into health and other useful endeavors such as work and also leisures. The only one way how we can actually reduce sick times, of course, is to improve our health, to make us stronger from the beginning, to avoid being sick. So we have this constraint here with time, so that we would like to actually represent one of the simplest economic model to understand how we actually spend time on the productive time that we define here. In order to illustrate the trade-off between health and home goods, we are going to use this one very simple economic principle. It's what we call the production possibility frontier model. I believe some of you guys here already learned about this in your principal microeconomics. So a production possibility set actually traces out all of the possible combinations of health and home goods that are attainable given an individual budget and time constraints. In a traditional models, we know that an individual who devote all resources to health, H, will have no resources left to buy Z. And conversely, an individual who devote all his resources to Z obviously will have no resources to devote on H. But the problem in this traditional model is when we have one individual that is actually spending all the resources on Z, well, H, health, becomes 0. Well, the problem is it's probably not very sensible to assume that people who don't devote any times or any resources to improve health will actually get 0 health, because 0 health, that means the person actually die. And it's hardly to believe that individuals has a minimum H that is equal to 0, because, well, that means the person who don't care about his health will actually die immediately, which is, I would say, not very true. It leads us to believe the true production possibility frontier model, it's actually not looking like the traditional one we learned in microeconomics. In fact, we have this new production possibility frontier model to illustrate the constraint faced by the individuals in the Grossman models. So let's take a look of each point on this correct PPF model. At point A, you see this is the minimum health that can be attained by the individuals. Well, at this level of health, obviously, this individual is spending most of the time sick. So that means it has no productive time available to work, play, or improve health at all. So at the same time, that means, well, this person is not working, has no income to afford any of the home goods Z. So that's why you see this individual getting sick, very, very sick, will have no contribution from Z because, well, it has no income at all to get the home goods. At point B, well, the individual is actually healthier and have some time available for productive activities. And part B, between point A to point C, actually this is what we call the free lunch zone, because at this free lunch zone, an hour spent increasing health yields more than an hour reductions in sick time. So the individual can actually increase both Z and H at the same time without giving up any of one of the other variables. At point C, on the other hand, the free lunch zone does not exist. 1 extra hour spent on health yield exactly 1 extra hour of productive time in this case. So the individual is still not as healthy as he could be because he's not spending all his time jogging or all his money on medical care or maybe on other health-related consumptions. So the individual actually enjoys the maximum amounts of Z possible at this point. But it is possible for the individuals to improve its health. The only way to improve health at this stage here is to maybe giving up some level of Z, which is home goods. So in order to improve health, the individual cannot do it without taking away Z. And to try increasing Z by shifting resources, sick time will actually increase and the overall gain in resources for Z. And what's important here at this point C is increases in health will not produce enough extra productive time in order to offset the time that he must dedicate on improving his health. So point D basically is one of the point in the trade-off zone. So in this trade-off zone actually consists all the point between C and point E. Well, at this stage of the production possibility frontier models, the individual actually trying to improve health by putting more resources, maybe time or maybe money on health improved activities. However, the returns of this health actually gain less of the opportunity to reduce sick time. So that means better health in this case actually yields very, very small decrease in sick time. So in this case, the individual actually needs to choose between either to have more health or maybe more of a home goods. As the individual trying to put more resources on gaining or improving health, well, this individual also at the same time has to give up some resources to devote on gaining home goods. And at point E here, the last point here basically is a point that illustrates spending all the time, money, and resources on health and trying to ignore any possibility of home goods. So at this point, basically, the individual actually has the maximum health, but sacrifice all the possible home goods that he can possibly get. So in this analysis here, we actually see this production possibility frontier model, but not every point will be the choice for this individual to choose in life. In fact, someone in the Grossman model that we described here actually only choose a point between point C to point E. There will never be a person that will be choosing from point A to point C, which is the free lunch zone, because the fact that the free lunch zone actually illustrates the individual has a higher opportunity to gain from having more of health and also home goods. So By that means, intuitively, it won't be an optimal choice for people to choose between the free lunch zone. So by that mean, this individual will choose any point that it's in the trade-off zone, which is between point C to point E. So this person will choose the optimal level of allocations between Z, home goods Z, and health H, depends on the indifference curve that we actually saw in the previous sections. Well, in this case, the indifference curve actually illustrates the utility level given different level of Z and H in life. So in this case, you can actually look at the utility functions here. U2 actually illustrate a utility level given different combinations of health and home goods. And obviously, it's not an attainable or maybe visible choice for this individual because it's outside the production possibility frontier. The only achievable or attainable level of combinations of Z and H, actually it's on the possibility frontier or maybe inside. At U0, the individual can actually attain the level of health and also home goods within the production possibility frontier. However, the gray area illustrates a possibility for this person to attain even higher level of utility given some level of health or maybe some level of home goods on this utility curve. So what makes sense for this individual to choose, or the optimal allocations in both good, is by looking at U1. And this indifferent curve, U1, actually is tangent to the production possibility frontier. So this is basically the optimal level of health and home goods this individual would like to get in order to get the maximum utility possible in his life. We can also look at two extreme cases in the world that we live in. If there is someone out there who only care about health that has a utility function or maybe an indifference curve that it's vertical, well, obviously, the maximum or the optimal choice for this person is to always get this maximum health, H star in the diagram, and not getting any home goods. So that means if the individual only care about health, obviously, well, he will not choose to devote any resources on Z, which is the home goods. On the other hand, if there is a person who only care about all this fun, leisures, video games, and not care about health, well, still, the person will not actually get the minimum health, but indeed, he will choose to get to point C here. So you can see the horizontal indifference curve that illustrates the person only care about the utility coming from home good Z. So in this case, obviously, point C is when the individual devote the maximum amounts of resources on home goods, but also maintaining his health at H star. So we look at how health can be part of the productions for both home goods and also health. And we've actually trying to study how health can be illustrated by the trade-off between home goods and health in the production possibility frontier models. The next thing we are going to study on is how health to become an investment in our life. So again, look at the three main rules of health in the Grossman models. We talk about how health can be a consumption good that contribute directly to our utility functions. And we look at how health can improve the productive time in our life in order to gain more of the home goods and also health. Now we are going to think about health as a stock or maybe a capital that we can actually invest in our future life. Let's suppose we are going to look at a utility function that has multiple periods. Instead of looking at one period, we say the utility actually add up every day. So every single day we have this one utility functions, and depends on the level of health and depends on the level of home goods that we have in our life. Adding all this utility from different periods, we will have a lifetime utility functions that it's represented here. Again, we are not going to go into too technicals into the mathematical forms of this utility function, but we are just saying that, well, what if the utility we are considering in our life does not only have one period, we have multiple periods that we add up. Well, in this case, we treat health as a stock. And some of this health that we actually get in one period will carry over to the next period. So home good, it's basically a flow. So it lasts only one period. That's what we assume here. The individual's discount rate delta here basically represents the discounts of the utility from one of the periods in the futures. So an individual's values utility now more than in the futures with this discount rate. And omega here basically represents the total number of periods that we have in our lifespans. But what's more important to look at in this utility functions here is to look at the productions of health, which is HT here. So different periods of T, we actually have a different level of time spent on health activities and also different level of market inputs for health. And also what's important here now is the health that we have in the previous period actually carry it on to the current period. And it actually depreciated at gamma here. So we use 1 minus gamma as a discount rate here. So this can be illustrated by maybe if you think about, let's say you eat 2,000 calories yesterday to maintain your minimum activities in your yesterday life. After that working day, obviously you sleep and then you wake up the next morning and then you digest all the food, you observe all the calories from the food yesterday. But somehow, because you also worked yesterday, your calorie in your body actually depreciated. So you have to eat again, right? So there are some health factors in our life actually depreciates over time. And that we are going to use this rate of depreciations, gamma, to represent. And in this functions here, we also recalling what we learned from the previous sections. Right? So health, HT, it's basically health at time period T. HT minus 1 is the health from the previous period. HT is the time spent on health in period T. And also MT here is the market input for health, like checkup or prescription pills, something that we have to pay in order to get, in order to improve our health. So in general speaking, we say health is a capital good. It's just like all the investments that we make in life. So health is also part of the investments. We invest in health and it carry over to multiple periods in our lifetime. the better health or higher level of health that we accumulate, well, at the end of the day, we will get better health and also gaining more utility from this health in the utility functions. But the thing is, this rate of return of health actually differs according to the starting point of health conditions. So that means the returns of health actually difference depend on whether the person is healthy now or maybe it's not so healthy. We believe very, very sick persons gaining actually more utility from the improve of health comparing to someone who is already very, very healthy and keep spending resources to improve his health. So the rate of returns from health actually diminishing as health is getting better and better. So we say the level of health is low, well, small investment actually yield a much higher return to productive time comparing to when the level of health is high. When the person is already very, very healthy, well, spending more and more investment in health actually yields a very, very slow return to productive time because, well, this person is already having all the time that it's available spent on all the productive activities such as working, leisure, and health activities. In the previous slides, we actually illustrate the marginal efficiency of capital curve. This curve actually shows how the marginal lifetime returns to health change with the initial level of health. This is also a curve that indicates how efficient each unit of health capital is in increasing lifetime utility. However, an investment to health does not actually have an infinite returns. Sometimes we may actually have the cost of making that investment to be too high that even high return does not justify the investments. So we have talked about this in the previous slides. Health basically produced by spending time on health activities or maybe spending income into the market goods for health, and also at the same time it actually coming from our previous period's health. So let's talk about income first. So in monetary term, if we are actually spending less time on health activity but switching the time to work, obviously we can earn higher level of income. And at the same time, if we are going to not buy those market inputs for health, and we have this extra money that we can actually put it somewhere. And we assume the opportunity cost for spending resources, and most of the time maybe it's money on this health related market inputs, can also be put into investments like the market investments that we see every day, like saving accounts, or maybe buying a stocks, or maybe buying some financial instruments. So some of this investment can actually accumulate the wealth and causing a higher returns of future incomes. And this income, it's represented by interest rates. So basically the interest rate is the opportunity cost for spending the resources into health related market goods. So in order to gain more health, we have to spend more money on it. And when we are spending more money in health-related activities, obviously we have less money spent on investments. So we are basically giving up the return of this investments products. On the other hand, not only money is one of the only opportunity cost in gaining health. We also have to consider the health depreciates over time. So remember we talked about this depreciations of gamma in the production functions of health. So health carry from one period or previous period to the current period, and it depreciates it by gamma. Well, aging basically is the problem we face because even though we talk about calories or maybe other health factors, but aging basically make us less and less healthy over time. So the returns by investing the level of resources on health to improve health, I would say it should yield at least benefits enough to cover the costs. Well, the opportunity cost here, we means the interest rate we forgoes and also the depreciations of health. So if the return is less than R per gamma, then the market return beats the health investment return. So in this case, we would like to turn our resources or maybe investment into some other types of market investment instead of health investments. Well, that means if there is one optimal level of health that we would like to choose, well, that will be when the marginal efficiency curve is meeting this opportunity cost in life. So when the marginal returns of health improvements equals to the opportunity cost for spending those resources into health improvements. So which is illustrated by H stars in the diagram here. So this is the point where the marginal cost balances with the marginal benefits of health investments. Well, we have basically briefly talked about the three important rules of health. So health can be direct consumption goods to our utility functions. At the same time, improving health will improve the productions of health and also at the same time the productions of home goods, because we have more time to earn income and more time to leisures, so that we have higher level of home goods in our utility functions. And at last, the last section we actually discovered health is also an investment. So it's just like a capital that we actually accumulate over time. So the level of health that we would like to achieve is when the marginal cost for investment health it's equals to the marginal benefits. So by understanding this fundamental theory, we can now actually try to use the Grossman model to help explain some of the phenomena that we've seen in our society. So we would like to actually discover why a better health it's among the educated individuals, but not for people who have a lower educated attainments. And also why people it's getting declining in health or level of health amongst the aging people. How come older people they actually choose to have lower level of health? So let's talk about the relationship between health and education. In most of the study that we've seen, well-educated individuals are actually more efficient producers of health. So basically, they can actually make use of the informations more efficiently, and also they can actually generate a higher level of return from health by investing less in their life. So college grads actually benefits more than a high school dropout in this regard. So the explanations here is we would like to understand the difference between the higher educated attainments individual to a lower educated individuals. So what we actually described earlier, the better educated individual, obviously, it's a more efficient producers of health. Or maybe they are basically just more efficient to spend on health investments in order to gain health. So let's suppose we are trying to look at the difference between two individuals here. Individual that has a college degree and also an individual that has only a high school diploma. So the individual with college degree, it's actually illustrated in the diagram by MECC. So this marginal efficiency capital for this graduates or college graduates individual actually has a higher returns of health comparing to the high school graduate, which is having the marginal efficiency capitals curve that illustrates by MECH. So by saying this, that means the individuals with the college degree, if both of them actually has the same opportunity cost in life, the same interest rate they're facing, and the same aging depreciations in life, they're basically at the same age, obviously the one who has a higher education will choose a higher level of health, which is HC star, than the ones who have only a high school graduate level of education attainment, which will choose the HH star. So this example here actually illustrates the college graduate is more efficient in producing health, which makes sense for this individual to invest more in his health. The high school dropouts, or maybe the high school graduate, on the other hand, does not produce health as efficient. So investment in health actually offer a very low return for these individuals. That's why it makes sense for him to focus more on putting more resources on home good. So this disparity in education and resulting differential in health has a major implications, because not only will the educated persons will be healthier throughout his life, as empirical evidence suggests, we see actually in the next chapter, she also enjoy a lengthier lifespans in this case. Well, the second important payoff of this Grossman model is that it provides an economic explanation for why health ultimately deteriorate with age. So let's recall from our health production functions, where health it's created by having time spent on health activities, the market inputs on health, and also the previous period's health. Well, obviously, we might actually ask why not making investments so that health will stay high forever. So the Grossman model actually predicts that it's too costly to stay forever young, so that's why we, at some point in our life, would like to choose a lower level of health. In fact, the depreciations of health, or maybe in general, I would say, the opportunity cost for health investment, actually it's not constant over our lifespan, mainly because of this biological reality of aging. So we believe that whatever health assets a person has, obviously not only tend to diminish over time, but it tends to diminish at a faster rate as he ages. So in economic terms, the depreciation rate gamma actually does not stay constant over a lifetime. As individual ages, his gamma also increases. If we are going to look at the diagram here, let's say if we actually looking at the age of 20, we might actually have the opportunity cost R plus gamma 0, which is the total cost of health investments at a very, very low level. Well, as we are aging, right, turning into our age of 40, where the gamma actually increased to gamma 1, now the opportunity cost for investing more in health, it's actually getting more and more costly. When we're getting into the age of 60, obviously, some of our body part might actually depreciate even faster. Like we have our heart to be weaker, the bones might not be as strong as before, and also some of the other health factors in our body actually depreciates much faster when we are at the age of 20. So this is basically the results that illustrates why people actually choosing different level of health at different ages. So in this study here, actually the depreciation schema here actually increase at a rate over time, so that the optimal health H star also declines over time. So because of the raising of these depreciations, obviously there are better investments in the markets for the individual to invest on instead of his own health. So ultimately, we will be actually having this H star eventually reaching out to the minimum health level, H minimum. So why would anybody actually choose to have the minimum level of health? So how is this level of health actually help the individual maximize its utility in the lifespan? So put it into this case here. Let's suppose there is a person, it's reaching to the age of 80. He can either spend, let's say, hundreds of dollars on these drugs that he has been taking, but he knows it because it's by the biological reality. Even though taking the pills, it's not going to help gain much of the health. Because he knows it. When he takes these pills, it gets better in one day, but then because of the aging problem, the functionality of his organ may not actually be functioning well, so that the pill may actually work out for one day, but then the next day, the functions of these pills may actually diminish quickly. So the costs, the total costs or opportunity costs for having higher and higher level of investments on health actually increase because of this age. So ultimately, this person might actually as well spend those hundreds of dollars that he spent on medications on something else. Let's say he might actually want to spend the money to have a very, very nice dinner with his family, or maybe spending money for buying better equipment to actually help his transportations, or maybe spending money on having some very advanced entertainment units set up in his home in order to have a higher level of utility or enjoyment from all these different home goods. So it's possible that when people actually reaching out to that level of cost, or maybe at that high age, they might think that the cost for investing their money on health improvements does not work for the benefits they are gaining, so that they will ultimately choose to have a very low level of health instead of the previous one. So there are several takeaways from this chapter here. So first of all, we would like to answer the first question we begin with the chapters. So is health something that happened to us, or is it something that we choose? Obviously, we actually talk about this in several different topics. By using the Grossman model, we say, well, the level of health is actually choosing by individuals. We actually choose the level of health that we want in our life in order to maximize our lifespan utility. And what's more dramatic is we actually not only choosing the level of health. Sometime when we get into this stage of age where we think that, well, it's no longer worth for spending more resources to improve health because the depreciations of health has been too high, then we will actually ultimately choosing when we would like to die. Well, but at the end of the day, well, what Grossman model it's useful, it's because it helps us understand the rule and trade-off of health in life. So it's not only makes sense to believe that health it's something that we have to spend resources on, but also we have to realize when we're spending more resources on improving health, at the same time we are giving up the resources spent on other things, such as in the model we are spending less resources to gain home goods. Well, in the next chapter, we are going to use the Grossman model again, and this time we are going to use some of the empirical finding in order to find out the relationship between social economic status and health. So I see you next time.